Dev Insights, the perk weight gating issue. Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Friedland, the technical owner for the engineering team that, among other things, owns the Destiny 2 reward system. I ended up leading the programming work around the perk weighting issue investigation, and we'll be walking you through some of what happened on our end. The timing of our community team escalating this issue to us was actually quite serendipitous. God damn it, Andrew. Serendipitous. I know that word. I mean, I've seen it a number of times. I know it. Nobody help me.
Serendipitous.
I fucking knew it. The timing of our community team escalating this issue to us was actually quite serendipitous. When this first popped up on my team's radar, Vincent Davies, one of the engineers on my team, was just wrapping up work on a script to help us validate the stat distributions on next-gen armor for Frontiers. With a few minor tweaks, we were able to use this script to also help us validate weapon perks, simulating thousands of drops per minute and logging the data for us to chew through. Using this tool, we were also able to quickly verify the community's findings. Our finding, while the probability of any single perk was even, the probability of pairs of perks was anything but. Here are the results of dropping almost 100,000 VS chill inhibitors. As the community had discovered, some perk combinations are more common, some are less common, and some are almost impossible to get. Wow, so their data literally came back exactly like our data. Y'all remember the split on that? In the middle section was like the more common ones. And then on the outer edges, you would have, you see where it's the red? This diagonal portion right here is the red. That would be like the impossible drops. That's good though. That means that y'all's data match their data. To understand what is happening here, we'll first need to take a deep dive into some math and computer science to define what random means to us. All right, so the point in this article that we're going to be reading here today, guys, is Bungie is literally trying to say, like, or give us an inside look into what happened with Weight-Gate. Weight-Gate, although something that was peddled by the community or some in the community as being an intentional way to extend the grind and to screw us over out of God rolls, wasn't necessarily the case. Blue is less common, not red. Oh, wow, that's right. Hold on. Here are the outer edges. Okay, so their data is a little different. So this is their big diagonal line, and then this diagonal line, and then the common ones. I don't know, maybe their layout's a little different here. So if you were trying to get a Rhyme Stiller one for all roll, 226. If you were trying to get a Bane Switch Envious Assassin roll out of 100,000 chill inhibitors, 229. Chill clip attrition, cascade chain reaction, surround and demolition. I mean, we want that, yeah. Explosive danger zone. Honestly, whoever got a Envious Assassin Bane Switch roll when Weight-Gate was an issue, do go buy a lottery ticket. Like, seriously. The stars have aligned. Maybe it already aligned too much for you and it's already out. All right, now what is random? True random events are things that we can often assign probabilities for, but can't predict. This includes things like a coin flip or a die roll, as well as broader physical phenomenon like where lightning will strike or when a radioactive atom will decay. For all of these, we can make general predictions about how likely something will be, but we can't forecast exactly what will happen. We're also unable to make a given result repeat when we want it to. Computers can't do true random on their own. And when true random is required, people have turned to things like atmospheric noise that is static on the radio or TV, recordings of the cosmic background radiation, or even walls of lava lamps. However, most things do not need truly random numbers. So for games, we generally don't want true random since we can't control it. Many years ago, some smart people came up with the idea of a pseudo-random number generator, PRNG. The general idea behind a PRNG is that given a seed number, often the current system time, we can run a series of mathematical operations to end up with a fairly random number. You can then use that new number as the seed for your next random number, ultimately giving you a sequence of numbers that is random enough. One big advantage of PRNGs over true random for games is that they are repeatable. When using a given starting seed, you're guaranteed to always get the same sequence of numbers, which means that if you have the same starting seed and the same inputs, then the game will turn out the same way. Games use this for many different uses, from saved films to fair tournaments and many more. One big disadvantage for PRNGs, as called out in the name, is that they are pseudo-random. There can be patterns that appear in the output of PRNG, and depending on how you use them, you may end up amplifying those patterns instead of getting something that appears random. To help visualize various algorithms, I will be using example data generated with the help from Joe Vincent, our engineering director. We'll start with the base use case of a PRNG, using 1 as the first seed and then using the last result as the seed for the next value. This results in a nice cloud of points with no clearly identifiable patterns, similar to the static on an old TV screen. This is exactly what we want, as it means that our random numbers are fairly evenly distributed across the possibility space, and that there shouldn't be any clear patterns when looking at a sequence of numbers. Okay. Unfortunately, on Destiny, we can't always feed the previous result back into the next seed. We have many places where we require stable, predictable seeds when generating new random numbers. This new seed selection was ultimately what was causing our problems. So the bug. In Destiny 2, we created a new system for items called the socket and plug system. This system handles a large percentage of what players see as gear, including weapon perks, mods, shaders, masterwork, and even armor stats. Randomized items were added in Forsaken, and the main way they work is through the socket and plug system. In Destiny 2, a weapon will have sockets for its barrels, magazine, and other perks. When we drop that weapon, we will select plugs to insert into those sockets from the list of legal plugs. And those plugs each represent the perks you are familiar with. You can thank the flexibility of the system for all the mayhem of the crafting last year. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. So plugs actually cause that issue. Who would have thought? Players can have different sockets enabled on the same item depending on what they have done or how they got it, as seen in the original implementation of Artifice Armor. This means that when initializing a new drop, we can't assume that we will always initialize sockets in the same order. To make sure that vendors offer the same perks to all players, even if some players have more sockets, we use a different seed for every socket being initialized. Unfortunately, this extra work to add stability ended up causing our bug. To select a stable seed for each socket on an item, we end up combining a number of different pieces of information together using a hash function, a mathematical way of taking some large chunk of data and turning it into a single number. While this new hash number was guaranteed to be stable as we originally intended, because the socket index was the last piece being added to the hash, we often ended up in a case where the hashes were sequential. And these sequential seeds are ultimately what caused the bad behavior. Going back to our tables, let's start by looking at hashes of sequential numbers. While the hashes themselves are not sequential, we can see some fairly clear patterns in how the numbers are coming out. This means that when we look at hashes of sequential numbers, we are likely to be able to find patterns in the output hashes. While this isn't on its own a bad thing, it does mean that there are some interesting patterns in the data we are feeding into the PRNG. You can see the gaps here, guys. Look at the gaps. Look at the spaces. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. It's fucking pyramids. Look at that. The witness lives. Bungie, I know what you're really trying to say. You're trying to teach us some stuff. Yeah, right. If we then drop those numbers into the random number generator, we could see that those patterns in the input data have corrupted our outputs, resulting in some patterning in the data. These patterns are specifically what resulted in some perk pairs being easy to get while others were almost impossible to find. Early sandbox investigations. The ultimate question: why didn't you investigate RNG earlier? It's a great question. Each time we see player feedback about difficulties in obtaining specific roles, our sandbox team has taken a look at weapon data first. Weapon perks have never had an intentional weighting, and in the absence of strong evidence that something more was going on, we left it at that. AKA, we just said, get good. Random number generation is so low level and foundational to the game, to all games really, that in the absence of clear or abundant evidence that something's off, it doesn't always make sense to task an engineer with investigation. Surely if something like this had been a frequent and obvious issue, we'd have noticed long ago, right? Like all game development, it's a question of priorities and trade-offs. Many in engineering and QA are focused on building the future of Destiny. Shifting their priorities to focus on something that potentially isn't an issue comes at a cost and a potential risk for those features and content. In this case, the community organizing around a data gathering effort was what made a strong case that there was an issue to be found, and we need to start a deeper investigation into the RNG code. Yeah, no lie, guys, y'all figure that out. I mean, straight up, y'all's data collection is what brought this. Could have been an ongoing issue. We could have played Destiny for the next decade, and had no one actually gathered data on this, we would have all been getting for years to come. From investigation, we found that the issue had been in the game for some time, but has only recently received substantial community focus and traction. Players began focusing primarily on the multi-mock CCX submachine gun from Iron Banner and the chill inhibitor heavy grenade launcher from Vesper's Host Dungeon. Even though the bug impacted all weapons, it can sometimes lead to desirable perks being easier to earn, and thus went unnoticed for some time. Several overlapping issues are responsible for this. The issue is most egregious on weapons with 6 perks per column. Oh, interesting. Some other similarly desirable weapons over the years have more or fewer perks than this, masking the impact of the issue to a degree. Okay, so you don't see the gaps, the clearly defined gaps as much when it's 6 perks per column. The bug is heavily mitigated by perk columns with multiple choices. Adept weapons and playlist weapons have access to multiple perks per column. Most in-game weapon sources such as raids, trials, nightfall strikes, and have adept weapons. Players can earn more perks per column on Vanguard, Crucible, and Gamma weapons via reputation resets. The bug is largely irrelevant on craftable weapons, which have applied to raids and most non-in-game weapon sources since the introduction of crafting in the Witch Queen. So dude, this has been something going on for a long time. Ultimately, our community was able to compile enough evidence over time to prove that even with the appropriate content setup of equally weighted perks, there was a deeper issue to solve. Okay, hold on. Let me wrap my head around this. How long has this been going on though? For real? Are we talking like the past year to 2 years? Are we talking like since the beginning of Destiny? Like since the beginning of the life of the game? Since Forsaken. That's a long ass time. That's a long ass time. Now the fix. Ben Thompson, one of our more tenured engineers, recognized this issue almost immediately. For anyone who was around when the original Whisper of the Worm mission launched, you may remember having issues getting the Taken Blight public event to actually appear. Cabal again? It turns out the underlying problem here is similar, where we were using sequential inputs to feed the seed for the random number generator. The fix in that case, and here as well, was to multiply our hash inputs by large prime numbers to better distribute them, also known as salting the data. While there would still be a regular step between sequential inputs, the actual value is now significantly different between two sequential inputs, and thus we are avoiding some of the patterning issues. When we hashed these salted inputs, we ended up with a much better distributed series of hash values. Look at that. Look at that. This is what you want. This is what you want. You still got some gaps, right? We still got some gaps. Not perfect, but it's better. And when we once feed the salted hashes to random number generator, we once again end up with a nice point cloud with no clearly discernible pattern. Oh, this seems even... Wait, I don't know. What's the difference here? Yeah. It's starting to look more like the static one, yeah? So yeah, okay. Yeah. It's trying to get it as close to random as possible. Yeah, see the headlines right there. Sequential salt hash random. Now, going back to our original test with Chill Inhibitor, what do our perk rows look like with this fix? All the perk pairs show up relatively even with some minor variations around the averages as would be expected from sampling or random events. The probability of getting any specific perk pair should now be close to true random, as originally intended. Damn, yeah, that's a lot better. That's a hell of a lot better. God, that's crazy, dude, that we've been living in this system for this long. The fix for perk selections went live in update 8.1.0.4, and we plan to do audits over multiple areas of the code base soon to watch for any similar issues. All in all, these learnings will empower us to prevent this from happening again, or at the very least, will help us do better spot checking from time to time to ensure the bug doesn't resurface. I would like to thank the community for their impressive data gathering, which helped us identify this rather insidious issue lurking in what is now fairly old and proven code. All right, look at that. Look at this last insidious issue lurking in what is now fairly old improving code. Is he telling us it's spaghetti? Is that code for this shit is spaghetti code? Look, honestly, this is a great article, man. Really. I mean, we were all curious about it. I will say this, you know, on the topic of like crafting versus RNG drops, a situation like this just completely eliminates any argument for us ever going back to RNG drops. Hopefully with this system, we do approach as close as we can to what true random is, right? I love this right here. The whole salting the data thing, you know, so that's amazing. That's amazing. And then trying to get it as close to what static is. And then this is what you get out of the 6x6 rolls for weapons, which is where it was most egregious. Curious to know, like, if this would resurface in any way for, like, say for instance the ritual weapons. It says that the issue wasn't as easily detectable, but you know they have a lot more traits, right? So I think going forward, we as a community just needs to continue just to monitor things, collect data ourselves, and yeah, if we feel like something's off for the first time ever, we don't just look at our fellow Destiny player and say, hey, you didn't get the god roll, just get good, man, just grind harder. Just be better. Instead, there actually may be something to what they're saying. Maybe we should hear them out. And because at one point here, 219 people, what is this? Or no, 229 people actually had the god roll here for Chill Inhibitor out of 100,000. That's ridiculous. That is terrible. But it took something like this on a desirable weapon for us to discover. Well, the good thing is, like, honestly, crafting has been such a blessing then for the past couple of years. And this is just how bad RNG could be. I'm glad we had crafting to counter this issue, and that hopefully if we do continue moving more in the direction of RNG, this system continues to be monitored and refined. But crafting, like, quite literally, you know, saved us there, at least for a little bit. What if crafting was created because this issue was known about? No. Crafting was created. I mean, that was something that was talked about for so long, dude. The Destiny community, we didn't know exactly how we wanted it to be, but people had been talking about weapon craftings, you know, since the day of weapon rolling back in Destiny 1. I'm still not convinced. It took me 25 ingrams to get a chill clip rocket sidearm yesterday. Yeah, man, that was, trust me, it took me quite a bit as well, yeah. And I still don't have the God roll. Why must everything be a conspiracy, not just a mistake? I wouldn't even say it's a mistake. It's just, it almost is a philosophical question here. What is random, you know? What is random just in real life? You know, while I'm reading this article, I'm like, wow, I don't know. Is a mistake cross? That's the engineer's job to write good code. Who was the engineer that wrote this shit? You know where I'm coming from? Again, hold on. This last line right here. Thank you for your help, community, for helping us identify this rather insidious issue lurking in what is now fairly old and proven code. Who's to say these engineers right now working on this, if any of them are the original that did? I mean, think about way back. I mean, because you got Tiger Engine got overhauled from Reach to Destiny. You know what I mean? The problem is that Bungie didn't listen to their player community, so they provided data they couldn't deny. Well, I mean, that was like only a week. You know where I'm coming from? I would say within a week, data was already out here. This is the Destiny community, dude. They had every, you know what I mean? Like within a week of farming for those grenade launchers, everybody was collecting data. But data helps. Yeah. LightGG has this data for a long time, right? Well, LightGG just, no one noticed it. No one, you know what I mean? Someone somewhere was like, wait a minute, do traits, are they likelier to drop in relation to where they are on their trait layout? Wait, is this, you know, again, common sense in retrospect, everything's like, yeah, well, no shit. It's like, yeah, it's on a die. No shit. It rolls around. Yeah, it's trait in relation to the trait next to it or close to it has a likelier chance of dropping. Again, in retrospect. But unless you're like looking for the bug, I didn't discover that. You know what I mean? I didn't come to that conclusion. I just assumed everything is random and that people that are not getting the God roll aren't grinding enough. Can I just... I mean, is anyone just like, are y'all just, I'm just happy this just solved more than anything. And like, I also feel like this is going to make me question just about every game now. Like every game that has loot drops. I like now that we've run into this issue, now that this has been opened up to us, Andrew here has talked to us about, you know, what true random is. Now I'm like thinking about every looter that I've ever played, and I'm wondering what is true random for you. Honestly, it's crazy that one of this problem stems from the fact that Destiny 2 Vanilla had static rolls in the beginning, and only later we got random rolls. Well, I mean, I would think this is actually an issue in Destiny 1. Like, look, as brutal as RNG may be to us inside of D2, dude, I farmed day and night for Isolona, and that motherfucker would not drop with the God roll. I could never get it. RNG in Destiny 1, and that could not necessarily be a roll issue or just like a purely volume issue. We just weren't getting enough drops in Destiny 1. That could be it. So there wasn't even enough times to even roll the die, right? I'm just glad they called it what it was. Pseudo RNG isn't rolling a dice, picking a starting point and a giant list of numbers and reading from there. All games work that way. I was just reading that comment. Maybe. I don't know. I'm not familiar enough to know what the loot systems are in other games. And again, I'm curious just what true random means in other looters.
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.